With the release of GPT-4 this week, many new opportunities have been unlocked. GPT-4 is multimodal, meaning that it is capable of processing and generating output from multiple modalities, such as text, images, audio, and video. Unlike previous language models that were primarily focused on natural language processing only. Whether you're trying to build a side project, business, I have some examples of the project that I found online on the screen, integrated into your existing projects, or just explore, this tutorial will help you understand how to integrate ChatGPT API. We'll also build a chat UI similar to that of ChatGPT and deploy it. But before we do that, let's take a quick peek at what makes this API so powerful that everybody's talking about it. So GPT that powers the APIs is one of the most advanced natural language processing tools available. It's developed by OpenAI and under the hood uses a deep neural network architecture consisting of 175 billion parameters, making it one of the largest language models in existence. Like, one of the reasons it's so powerful is it's been trained on an enormous corpus of data. So first you need to sign up for OpenAI, create an account on their page, and once you do that you can navigate to platformopenai.com, and here inside your account you can press API keys and create like new secret key. Make sure to store it in a safe place. We're going to use it for the tutorial. So to look at what kind of APIs they have, there's like two types that we can use for like this answer generation. There's a create completion. This is more for like one-time completion where you can pass a prompt. Maybe you can tell, oh, you're like assistant, something like that, and it'll generate like answer based on that. And here we have list of models. In this list we do have like a new let's see, model overview. The GPT-4 is included in this one. But the one that is a better suitcase for like the chats and more like natural conversation, where you can pass previous messages and it will read the context and generate like future messages based on the context. That would be this create chat completion. It's still in beta, so it's still in a meaning testing phase. And in here we only have two models. This GPT-3. So let's see. Oh, they did add, okay, GPT-4. To test your API key, we can copy this curl command here. You can either run it in your terminal, or in this case, I'm using Postman file import. Then we select raw text and paste it in. This will create just a Postman command. And once it's imported, make sure to go to headers and paste your API key in there. So once that is replaced, we send the request and we get back data where it comes with choices array, and then we have message, role assistant, and then the content of the message with finish, read, and stop. Here we can add some more like parameters to the body, for example, stream true. If you want to check more parameters, it's on their documentation. So the list is here. And then when we send this will return data back as a stream. So like character, you know how ChatGPT, when it's typing, it adds up characters, so you can combine them. This type is called server sent events API. In this tutorial I'm not going to cover it, but if you want to see that version, also let me know in the comments. I'm just going to use the RESTful version in this one. Okay, so let's create npx create next app. We're using Next.js framework of React, and here we set the name and some of the other parameters, and after that this will download the modules and create app for us. Let's cd into the app and then run it by npm run dev. Now I have this open in VS Code. I'm going to go to source pages index.js, which is the main file, and I will delete all the other code, and let's start creating like a simple form. So header, ChatGPT form, input. The type of this input is going to be text. This is where user types in the text. So let's add placeholder, type your message here. And after we have that, let's also import useState and useEffect, that we're going to use these two hooks to store and like fetch the data. So first let's store user input. constant input value, then set input value, and by default this is empty. Next up we have chat log. This will hold all the message like conversation history, and it's going to be an array. And finally we have is loading. This is when we are waiting for the API response. And in here we can pass the value, so the value reflects it, and when input updates we add onChange function and then take the event target value and set it to our new state. So set input value. Oh, I have a typo here. After that, after input we have a button to send the message. Now let's create handle submit function. This is triggered when user types in the message and presses send. This is because this is form, we need to take the event and prevent default, otherwise it's going to reload the page. So first let's take in user message and add it to our conversation history so it shows up on the chat itself. So set chat log, we take previous chat log, add it to all the messages like the new message. We indicate type that it's from user and then the content of the message. Then we clear out the user input for to get it ready for the new message. In here, before the form is where we can display all the messages. So let's map out chat log, map, message index. Here we set the key first, and then inside here we're going to have the contents of the message. And we need to pass form on submit, handle submit function. So once we type in, the messages are going to show up. Okay, let's create a new .env file. This is to store environment variables. Now we have our API key. Make sure it starts with next public open, because otherwise client side isn't going to pick it up, and paste your key in here. Once you save that, we have to quit the app because it needs to pick up environment variables every time you add that. So I'm going to stop running the app. And here in terminal, I'll start adding Tailwind modules. So we need Tailwind CSS, post CSS, auto prefixer install. Then we run command npx tailwind init. This will create these two files. Inside Tailwind config.js in content, we pass this path, which will know which files it needs to look at. Let's save this, and one more final step for Tailwind is in global CSS. We're gonna remove all the other styles and import their modules. Okay, that's it for the Tailwind. Now to call the API, we're gonna add one more package. This is the Axios. It's pretty popular in terms of fetching the data from the API. So npm install Axios. And at the top, we're going to import it. So just Axios as a name from Axios. Let's create a function that's going to get the data from OpenAI. So constant send message equals, and this will take in the message. And then we're going to prepare writing. First, we're going to paste the URL of the endpoint we're making a call to. So I'm going to paste that in here. After the URL, we can define some headers. So create a new object, content type, let's set that to application JSON. And then we must pass the authorization, which is bearer, and then the API key. And then the way in Next.js we can read the environment variables is process.env. And here's the name of the key that we just saved. So next public OpenAI underscore key. And then in the data, we're going to pass the model name, which is required by OpenAI. So let's look at the list models here in the documentations. Actually, I paste the other API URL, so it should be chat completions instead. And let's pick the model, so model endpoint. And so for chat completions, we can take the GPT-4. Since it's listed as one of the options. So let's pass that in here. And after that, we need to pass also the messages. So that's an array. We indicate the role user, and then we pass, that would be the object. We also pass the message that the user has sent. So content, set that to the message. Here we can make set the is loading to true before we start making the API call. I have a typo there. And finally, you can post Axios, make a post request, pass the URL first, then comes the data. Finally, we have the headers, and then we'll take the response. And first we will set we can like console log it to see just how it looks like. And let's fix the parentheses here. Okay. And I'm gonna close this out. Set chat log. Once we get the data, we'll pass it to our conversation history and like save it, so it just like shows up. So this will be the same process as for like way we did in input, where we take the old previous state of chat log and then add it. But in this case, the type would be bot, and then the message is response.data choices. Since choices is an array, we're gonna pick first one, and then that message content. Finally, we set is loading to false because we already got back the result from data, and then we updated the state. So yeah, set that false. We can do some catch if there's any errors and console log the errors, and also update the state of the loading, set it to false. And we can save this and pass send message inside handle submit. So whenever user presses send, it should be triggered. We can once again run the application npm run dev and test our new function. So we have, I'm going to open the console to see how the data is coming back, and we are getting an error. We can examine, oh, this model doesn't exist. Okay, so let's go to, oh, it does say it only has 2 options for now. So we're gonna paste this second one. It was the other endpoint that had maybe all the list of options, also GPT-4, but we can update that. It's very simple to update in the data. So let's paste that and save it. Run it one more time, see how it looks now. So yeah, once again passing the same message, and we did get the data back. Great. Now we can update some of the styling. So I'm using Tailwind utility classes. So setting container, this is for the whole like the chat box. It's gonna be centered, setting maximum width. Then we have a column direction. The height is gonna be the full screen, and then setting background color. Also for the ChatGPT, like the header, I'm gonna create like a gradient colors display it. So that could be done to BG gradient, text transparent. This is how it looks like. And then we can wrap our messages history into a new class, make it flex scroll. That means that it will take up the remaining of the space on the screen. And finally, inside here, the direction of the messages, we once again need like flex column, and there's some space in between them, which is space Y4. Let's move on to the message items itself. So for class name, this would be flex. And then here we have 2 cases, the user message, right? And then the bot message. And that will have a little bit different styling. So we want to align user to justify end. So that would be on the right side, and then justify start for the bot. And then inside here, we can also have different colors, whether or not if it's a user or a bot, so it's visually we can identify. So for user, let's do background purple 500. For the bot, let's do background gray 800. And for both of them, rounded LG, some padding, text white, and then set the max width. So this is how it looks like. And we can move on styling for the form. So flex, let's set that to null, add some padding, and for div class name, flex rounded. Also, we're gonna add a little bit of border around it and change the background color so it's different from the surrounding like the box or container it's in. For input, let's do flex grow, so it also takes up the rest of the space. The background transparent text would be white, and then we're gonna remove any like focus outlines. And the styling for button, we're gonna set this color to purple, background purple 500. Also gonna make it rounded, add some paddings, text would be white, and then font semi-bold. Also on hover, we're gonna set background purple 600, and then transition some like small animation. Now, as you notice, when we're like typing in like a message and sending it, there's no like loading indicator. So in components, let's create a new component, name it typing animation, and let's like show like, you know, when 3 dots shows up, so we can give users notice that the text is loading. So that would be flex item center, and inside here we're gonna have 3 dots. The dots will just be created using classes. So with height for rounded full, this will create like the circle, and then set the background gradient, and animate pulse is the class that's gonna animate. So it would be 3 dots in total. So I'm just gonna copy paste the dots and add a delay, so each dot animation comes after the other one. So let's export this typing animation, import that into index.js. And so at the top, typing animation from components, and then the name of the component. Once we have that imported here, we can check first if the state is loading, then we're going to display it. And then this will be also wrapped the inside like bot message. So it's going to look like it's a message from bot. So div class name background gray 800, so same styling that the bot has. Padding text white, then we pass the animation. And let's save this and see how it looks like. So typing in the message here, I'm gonna ask it how can I prevent keys from showing up on React, because right now if we deploy what we have, it will expose our API key for OpenAI. So let's see if ChatGPT knows how to hide it. If it doesn't know, then I'll show in the, this is after that is how I'll do it. So the dots are not showing up. We did get the answer. Maybe there's a typo in typing animation. Let's see. But looking at the answers for ChatGPT, it does say to use environment variables, which we are using right now. And server-side rendering, use hashing or encryption on the client side before sending data to the server. Okay. So I guess it's not 100% sure on the answer. It did give us a disclaimer that it's not capable to provide a security advice, so maybe they're being more careful on that. As for our typing animation, so it should be the background to okay, the first step is going back to that .env file, removing next public. We're gonna stop running the server once again. We do this every time we update the environment variables. So let's stop this, and now in the API hello.js we have a sample API endpoint. We're gonna rename this and create our own API endpoint that calls the OpenAI. So first, as we know, we use like post methods. So for our API, we can check if the request method is not equal to post. We can send back like the 405 error saying that if we're using like a wrong method. So the message would be the method should be post. And else here we can call the API. It would be almost the same logic as we did on the client side. So let's first import Axios here at the top. And we're gonna also copy some of the settings that we used previously. We're gonna turn this function into async since it's making a asynchronous call, and then we can use try catch, and inside try we can try calling the API. So constant response and then equals to Axios post, and all the arguments that it's taking, we can pass some of the arguments. And for the messages, we're gonna take that since messages are dynamic, we're gonna take that in from the API. And after the try call, we have a catch where if there's any errors, we catch them, console log them, and as a response back we send 500 and then the message that something went wrong. This is the response of our API. Let's remove this and instead paste the response in case, so status 200, that means it was successful. Also update the next public OpenAI API key. We don't need that anymore since this is not a client side anymore. It's reading for the updated environment variables. To get the body from request, we say constant destructuring, like the body from request. And instead of message, we're gonna send body inside the data. And we do need to also copy this response and send it back. So inside the JSON, it's gonna go in there. And now we can actually directly send the body and remove the data in case from the client side we want to update model or something. Remove the console log, and I think for the response we can just return response.data instead like of whole response, because we don't need it, we need just the data part. Okay, to save it, we can test it by calling localhost API chat, send the message, and we should just test to get the same data back as in the same format as before. Now we can update the call we're making from client side. So this way on line 30 where we have process.env next public OpenAI key, that doesn't get bundled inside the file that gets generated when we're building and deploying the app. So we can remove that, and to call internal APIs we can just do /API and chat, and everything else like the format post method remains the same. Now we can test it just in case to make sure it's working. So let's type in a message and press send. We're getting typing animation and the message from the bot back. Now time for deployment for Next.js projects. Vercel is the solution. We just create a new project by importing GitHub. I'm gonna also add a link to my to this code of this tutorial. And one thing I changed before deploying to GitHub is I renamed env to env.local, because by default when you create Next.js app, this is what's Git ignored. Also, we have to copy OpenAI API key and add that on the Vercel like deployment settings. So let's copy that and continue to dashboard. Once you upload the Git project, you just press deploy, that'll deploy it. And inside the project, we can go to settings and environment variables on the left. This is well, we'll add the key and then the value of the key you got from OpenAI. To deploy, you might see like different links here. So this is the deployment link and this is the domain link. So if you go to deployments, there's like stages. So this will show like what was the change in the development. But let's say, for example, if you want to take the latest deployment and if you want that to show up on your domain, you can just promote it to production. And this is where the domain is. So this will point to new deployment. So once promoted to production successfully, we can go to, oh, it's waiting for build to finish. Okay, we just wait for the build. And once it's done, let's go. Actually, this is the product and this is the main domain. Okay, here it is. Also, I modified the API endpoint a little bit. This is for just to make sure that my API is called only by the domain that I have created and no other website. So if you like to do the same just as another security step, so we can go over the code here. What I'm getting is a refer, basically like who is calling the API. And first I'm checking, so by process env node environment in Next.js, we can check what environment we're currently on. So for development, of course, from localhost, we want to be making those requests. So if it's not development, then it's going to exclude. But if it's production or any other stage, then it will check for the referral. And then inside environment variables, in here, I set my app URL to the domain of my website. So if it's not that one, then it will return this unauthorized status number and code saying unauthorized. So that would be all for tutorials. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to share what kind of projects you're working on that's using ChatGPT API in the comments, or maybe you need help deciding on tech stack other than just using the API. So I'll be happy to share my suggestions, and I'll see you in the next video.